Taking a slow bite of the stew, Frayo almost moaned audibly. Say what you want about this male and his Zorn warrior prince aesthetic. The man could cook almost as well as her father. He smiled happily, as she visibly enjoyed her first bite, and waited patiently for her to answer his question. "Well, I lost my comm system with my helmet," she said, after taking a moment to swallow. "The only real way to do anything now is to activate the beacon on my belt and wait for pickup." He took a moment to think about that before standing up and grabbing her suit, that now lay discarded on the floor. He sat back down in front of her and handed the small pile of armor over to her. "Will the beacon work inside of here?" he asked, gesturing to the cave system. "Unfortunately not," she replied, shaking her head. "It needs to be activated where signal interference won't be a thing, usually a hilltop, plateau, or open grasslands." The attractive male shook his head and exhaled a breath. "Listen, I know a place that could work, but it's an uphill hike from here. In total it's about 2 miles, but a lot of that is scrambling up boulders, through forests, and then finally breaking out into a way too open mountaintop past the tree line." He grimaced, looking at her bandaged leg. "And frankly, I don't think you're in a position to do any serious hiking for at least another day or two, if not a few weeks." He stood up and took a now empty bowl from her hands, much to Frayo's dismay, only to have her greedily eyeing him as he bent over and began refilling her bowl, and boy did she enjoy the view. He returned in short order, a thoughtful look on his face as he passed the newly refilled bowl of stew her way. "So, you're telling me," he said in a jovial, if slightly mocking tone, "that a race of 7-foot-tall alien women capable of faster than light travel, clean and efficient energy sources, mech suits, and pioneers of medical science don't have a way to get signals out of a little bit of mountains of rock?" She shot him a glare in return, but she couldn't hold it for longer than a second, before smiling back herself and taking a bite of her food. "We do," she said with a slight sigh, "but if you want the signals to go more than a couple dozen miles, you need a fairly powerful amplifier. And unfortunately for us, that's almost backpack-sized, and is used more at a pod or full team level than for individual use. Believe it or not, I'm not the one with that system. That'll be Grim, our fearless leader." He raised his right eyebrow at how she said fearless with some sarcasm. "By the way, you know my name, but I don't know yours. You should tell a girl, so I'm not screaming the wrong name later. In combat, of course." She winked as she said the last part, eliciting a grin and a chuckle from the man. "Oh yeah," she thought. "He's into me." "I'm Adam McGinnis," he said, flashing her a winning smile that made her heart skip a beat. She'd been with a male or two before, but they were never so forward, and their mentality just never meshed with her special operations lifestyle. Maybe she could convince this man to come home with her. Empress be damned, that wouldn't be the hard part though. The hard part would be convincing her chain of command to let her clearly seditious, whether currently or not, man off-world without prison time, to live back on a military base with her. That would be a challenge. A real challenge. "If you can give me a day to rest, I'll be good to move to get us out," she said, holding his gaze. "But if I'm being honest, I don't know how command will react to you, existing." He seemed to ponder this and laughed. "Listen, I'm actively collaborating with a perp and protecting her from local forces. At this point, my life on Earth is over. I wonder what's out there in the stars for me. It can't be worse than staying on this rock," he said with some finality to his tone, staring deeply into her eyes from where he sat a few feet away. "Listen, Adam, I'll try to talk to the Major into pulling some strings, but in the end, leaving the planet might not be possible for you yet." She entirely winced, thinking what would happen if he was, in fact, sent to a Shorvanti prison. Males could sometimes be treated very unkindly. He just laughed it off, took her now empty bowl from her hands, and opened a small bottle of water to begin rinsing out the dishes. After he finished, he set them back down by the pile of weapons, ammunition and food supplies in the corner. He then began to rifle through the, rifles, and in short order pulled one from the pile. He then grabbed a green ammo box and started pulling loaded magazines from it and shoving them into what appeared to be a pile of burlap fabric. Nodding his head and seeming satisfied with his task, he walked back towards her with the bundle of tan fabric loaded down with magazines in his hand, suspended by straps, and a rather large for a human rifle in the other. "Well, as much as I don't like trusting you," he said, looking minorly amused at her briefly panicked face, "if you're going to hike up a mountain next to a valley possibly full of militiamen, you're going to need to be armed. And that dinky little laser pistol you had on your hip when I found you just won't cut it. So here's a gift to you. Tell the laser above you that you confiscated it." He then handed her the weapon, and what she now recognized was a chest rig. Looking over the weapon, she recognized it from the few battles with militiamen she'd been involved in. It was from the general platform of a common rifle known as the AK-47, but she couldn't identify the variant. He elucidated that problem for her in short order. That is an RPK. It has a 70-round drum which is loaded in right now, and then a bunch of 40-round magazines in the chest rig. There's also a bipod on the front of it for firing in the prone, along with it being capable of semi-auto and full auto fire. This, he said, actuating the safety along the side of the weapon, is your safety and fire selector. Yoinking the knob here, he said, gesturing to a bulbous protrusion on the side of the weapon. To load a new round into the chamber after a reload. Think your candy ass will be ready to hump it after a mountain in a day or two? He said with a chuckle in his voice. After his brief introduction on operating the weapon, the Bev continued about their day, which for Farilla meant endless eye candy as he went about his tasks. At one point her eyes nearly bulged from her skull as he ripped his shirt off in one dramatic motion and began to work out. She was used to skinny men, not ones built like an Empress damn Turox. It was hard enough being trapped with a male, alone for almost 2 days now and being unable to do anything about it, let alone one who was shirtless, doing pull-ups from a beam near the exit of the cramped cave they were in. It was doing lovely and exciting things to his sweat-covered back muscles when he suddenly dropped from the beam and turned to look at her. "Caught you red-handed," he said with a grin, grabbing his shirt from where he sat. "You're a dirty human lover." Pulling it over his head, he treated her to one last amazing view of his chest, and then walked over to the food pile and returned with 2 cans. He opened one and passed it to her, before opening the other for himself. It contained a yellow fruit, diced in small triangles. It smelled lovely, and she quickly dug in. He chuckled in amusement and said, "So, you like pineapples, do you?" "Dear goddess, yes! This is almost better than sex!" She leaned her head back as she quickly emptied the last of her can into her mouth. Adam chortled at her reaction, and flashed her another jelly leg-inducing smile. "I'm glad. I'll be back in a few hours. I have to go check on our friends in the valley below and check my snares. Rest up." He promptly dumped the last of his pineapples into his mouth, threw in his backpack and grabbed a large rifle with a scope from the pile, the same one which he had been using when he found her. He waved at her and left the mouth of the cave. The next few hours passed by slowly for Farilla, and she did get up to limp around the cavern, which hurt but not as much as she expected. She had put back on her suit, folding up the shirt which Adam had given her into a small belt pouch. She liked it, and it fit her well, given that Adam was only a couple of inches shorter than her, but it had a significantly wider frame. It fit her loosely and frankly reminded her of her first boyfriend in school, who would frequently steal her tunics and blouses, which fit him more like a dress than anything else. It was odd to feel that role reversal, and simultaneously hurt her feminine pride while making her feel secure. It was a mood she had never felt in her life, but she had to admit, she liked it. After another hour or so, she heard something that made her heart drop. A distinct exchange of gunfire echoed through the cave system. The lighter and more high-pitched staccato was punctuated periodically by basil booms with a rifle she knew all too well. The fire abated, and after 15 or so minutes, she was about to grab the weapon Adam had given her and go search for him. "I shouldn't have let the male go out by himself," she thought angrily to herself. "What would my father say if he had seen this? Goddess damn it, I'm such an idiot." She then put the chest rig full of ammunition on, grabbed the RPK, attached the HSP9 pistol to its magnetic holster on her belt, and made for the door, only to hear footsteps running from the entrance. She took cover at the corner of the entrance and was about to move to fight the intruder when she heard Adam yelling from the entrance. "Farilla, it's me. Pack your shit, we are leaving now." She lowered the RPK as he walked into view. "Oh, good, you're already packed. Cover the entrance for a few while I get ready." "On it," she said, raising her rifle and setting the fire to what she believed was full auto after he had moved into the chamber. He moved quickly, ditching his backpack and throwing on a camouflage plate carrier, a battle belt, and his helmet with night vision. He then grabbed a small carbine rifle with what she knew was a suppressor, red dot sight, and a flashlight on it. She couldn't identify the big rectangle on the front, but it didn't really matter right now. He slung the large rifle over his back, cracked his knuckles, and moved to the opposite side of the wall to her. He then pulled a cube of what looked like putty with a small antenna attached to it from a pouch near his rear, and threw it on the pile of ammo and weapons. Nodding to himself and seeming satisfied, he returned to his position across the entrance from her. "You ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," she replied. He nodded and began to move when a sharp crack was heard from outside the tunnel, followed by masculine screaming. "Toe poppers, that's our cue," Adam said, and pushed into the tunnel towards the evening air.